Um, what is up? Welcome to the Vinamra Kasana Show. Varun Maya. Um, you have an extensive bio on your website. I'll dive
Do I?
straight into it. There is something from 2018 that says that you like to keep up with the Kardashians, but you also enjoy reading the life and times of Donald J. Trump. I have a very interesting story behind it. Before all this stuff happened in the USA and Donald J. Trump became president, my dad was fond of his business acumen. And we had this book in our household. It was called How to Get Rich or The Life of J. Trump, something like that. Some classic like Shiv Khera-esque book, but for Donald Trump. Um, and I'm interested to know, what's the Donald Trump connection with you? Are you a fan of him because of his business acumen? Was that like a clever PR code that he wrote? I was just really curious.
I'm not a fan of Donald Trump. I just
Hmm.
find him entertainment, just like the Kardashians.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, what was going on America Inc. or let's just call it on America via Twitter and news and whatnot. It's the reality TV, dude.
Hmm.
It's no different from the Kardashians. So that's what the quote was about. Essentially,
Hmm.
I was saying whether it's Kardashians or Trump, it's all like reality TV. So I keep up with all of it. But in
Right.
reality, I don't.
I
वो
feel that.
तो
So
to sound cool on the website, I put some shit.
I understand, which is why I wanted to ask, because it is the sort of, it is the exact hook line that would have someone like me ask you that question in an interview. Um, cool. Then there is other stuff that I'm generally curious about what you do. Now I understand that you are the CEO of Avalon and the numerous companies associated with that. You also recently acquired my friend Prakhar as your CCO, which has been
Mhm.
berserk seeing all of that happen. It's been fun. Um, but then I discovered this thread that you have online about this game that you developed. I was on Quora and I found out like there were some, reviews around Avalon, and you responded with serious technical detail about stuff that I didn't understand, complicated
Mhm.
software terms, all of those things. And it led me to a thread that had the screenshots of your first game where you were sort of sharing how complicated it is to try to map New York in this game. There was a screenshot, um, which I was taken aback by that. Um, have you have you still been producing games? You still produce games now?
I made one a couple of years ago.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I don't have time to make anything more than a demo. I can
Hmm.
make, I'm talking specifically about single player games, right? I have no time to spend building out a full game because it's distracting. A demo I can like whip up in like 2, 3 days on a
Right.
weekend. It's like my side project. But otherwise, I'm very focused on the business. So it's very hard for me while I'm working on the business to sit and like do something else.
Hmm.
Uh, the only like Achilles heel that I have is the fact that I cannot like I can do all these cool things as side projects, but I can't do them as primary projects simply
Hmm.
because time is eh, I barely have any time. I guess no better way to put it than that.
Hmm. I understand. But I've been a fan of games. Now I had no experience in designing games, but I certainly appreciated game design as any single player game loving gamer would do. And I never played online until like the PUBG revolution happened. But I played single player games a lot. I played a lot of GTA games. I played a lot of God of War. I played a lot of games that had this term known as open world gameplay, or either rather sandbox style games, right? I was just curious. I mean, when you play games, you do tend to look at it from the standpoint of game design. Are there any games that strike out to you from maybe when you were growing up that even gripped you to pursue game design on the side?
Bro, I really like multiplayer games. I
Hmm.
don't like single player games. I have never liked single player games. Even if I like them, I like them for things like the art. I will not like them for like I won't enjoy playing the game. I get bored after like 10 minutes.
Hmm.
The thing about games, right, is that most games, even the best ones, right, like GTA, like the most comprehensive ones, single player games I'm talking about, they have a function of things start getting repetitive.
Right.
After a while, it's like, okay, beat a guy, get into a car, drive around, murder some pedestrians. It's fun, sure. But the second time, it gets a little less fun. The fifth time, you're like, hey, dude, I've done this 100 times. I want to do something else now.
Right.
Right. So I felt that a lot. Maybe it's a function of my dopamine receptor, but I get bored very easily. And when I start playing multiplayer games, even though compared to say an open world game like GTA, multiplayer games are very small. Like the game I love is a game called Dota. It's one map.
Hmm.
The map is literally one, probably 100,000 of the GTA map, and probably even lesser. And you play the same map every single time when you start. But because of the fact that it's multiplayer and there are like 9 other players in the game with you, that spontaneity factor kicks in. Koi abuse karega, koi, you lose a skill in a new way. Some really funny instance will happen where you'll just lose your mind, right? Or like I'll give you an example, right? Me and Shashank, we were going to meet a very big VC in Bangalore, right? Now that COVID has started, like kind of the restrictions started coming down.
Right.
So we were going to meet them in person. The meeting was at 6 o'clock. It's a 1 hour drive. Okay, so I was going to leave. We had to leave by 5. Me and Shashank had nothing to do till 5. So about 3:30 or something. At about 4:30, we still had nothing to do. I was just like, let's play one game. We'll try to get it done in 30 minutes. So we started. And the thing is, we were playing two kind of heroes who are very good at pushing, like ending the game fast, because obviously we had to
Right.
end the game fast, right? 30 minutes we had.
So you picked up characters that had stats, like stats advantage toward pushing. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, essentially. These are characters that can spawn minions, right? So
Right.
you
Okay.
put more pressure on the opponent towers.
Hmm.
But for some reason, the game just wasn't ending. Opponents were being quite toxic. And then something happened. We somehow, both of us just teleported while they were ending our base. We both teleported there and ended their game before they could, kind of end ours. It was 5-5 by the time we ended the game. And in such sync, me and Shashank have been playing multiplayer games for 10 years now. The ending was so satisfying, but we knew we were out of time. Both of us took off our headphones at the end. We both sit in the same office, by the way, like right next to each other, same room. Both took off our headphones, put it down at the exact same time. Both walked out at the exact same time. And the thing is, if you look at that, you'll be like, what is this? So in sync, right? But it's not that we're in sync. It's the fact that we've been doing this for 10 years. We know this pattern we've done out of sync so many times that we know exactly what needs to be done, right? We knew, okay, 5 minutes are up. We need an hour. We'll be 5 minutes late. And that's what I really like about Dota and playing these spontaneous multiplayer games. I can do it for the rest of my life. I'll never get bored. Because every game, right, there are millions of unique possibilities. And I like engaging in these. You don't know what can happen in a game. It's always exciting to see what can happen.
Right. I see what you mean, especially because even with massive games like GTA, once you figure out the spontaneity or the chaos that the game's AI or storyline puts in, and once you've completed that cycle, when you repeat it, you're not as surprised anymore. There isn't that foreign alien element of someone just crashing something, or like you said, abusing, all of those things. That's very interesting. I find multiplayer games very fascinating in person. I like to play poker and other indoor games, but for some reason, online gaming communities are still pretty alien to me, which is why I wanted to like sort of even ask you, as a complete apprentice to this field or trying to learn, what is it about games that allows so many people across this country and the world to just hook into these large computers for hours at end, playing repetitively on pretty simple repeatable format like games, like like in जैसे Call of Duty के अंदर ये होता है कि तुम्हें किसी का capture करना है flag, that's it. It's there isn't like a grand goal at the top beyond just winning with your team. I don't know.
Yeah. Would you enjoy playing chess or poker against a computer?
Not so much.
Exactly. You can ask all the best chess players, right? They will play against a computer to improve their timing and stuff like that, to improve how they play, but they won't enjoy it. That's practice. They won't enjoy it. People play games primarily, at least Call of Duty, Dota, poker, chess, whatever. It's primarily a social exercise. They're bonding with other humans. I'll tell you one of the coolest feelings for me, right? Like 6 p.m. every evening from the ages of 20 to 25, 6 p.m. every evening, huh? Actually, most evenings. Sometimes 8 p.m. Some years of my life. Come home, switch on my computer. My party, these 5 friends who I usually play with, they're all always online. Me and 4 other guys. And 6 p.m. or 8 p.m., the proceedings start. Like we'll all queue for our first game. This is social, dude. Right? And on Fridays or Saturdays, it's me and like 5 friends who go out, socialize, and I don't see any difference between the two.
Fascinating. Yeah.
So it's an activity where I'm bonding with my friends. That's what gaming is. I don't play games, even multiplayer games. I try not to play with random strangers. It bores me.
There is this thing that you've often said in your interviews around having comfort with uncertainty and burning bridges. I recently read something along the same lines in um, The Art of the Good Life by Rolf Dobelli, who's written The Art of Thinking Clearly. So this book was the sequel, and he's one of the sort of things to living a good life is inflexibility as a strategy. And I wanted to ask you, because you said that in a bunch of interviews, what things in your business world are you willing to be inflexible about?
Actually, I follow a principle of flexible persistence. Right? I'll tell you what that means. If I have a goal, I'll try to hit the goal. But if I find a wall too big or too thick, rather, I will not try to break my head and run through it. I would rather try to be agile and run around it.
Right.
So I'm flexible in that sense. I will not run into walls. I will dodge walls, right? But I'll still be persistent. I'm still trying to get to my goal. So it just it's a flexible way of getting to my goal. So I'll have this sort of loose, ambiguous goal, and I will try to reach it. But one iteration of what I build might not be the right one. So I'll switch to another lane slightly nearby and try to do it, it's in a slightly different way. What I'm inflexible about is I love freedom. I love my freedom. Right? The measure of a man can truly be, I think Taleb said this, right? The measure of man is truly based on how much free time he has during a day. Right? And everything I do, including run my company, I do out of my own volition. The day I feel shit, I'm being driven to do this by someone else, by my investors, whatever, blah, blah, blah. That's not something that's interesting to me. I value my freedom over everything. And I think that's people say, creator economy is about passion, this, that. They're all getting it wrong. The distilled function of creator economy or being a creator is about your freedom, right? And I was a creator before the word creator got popular, right?
What do you mean by that?
It is all, but ever since last 10 years, I've never had a job. Never ever had a job, right? Everything has been self-run. And I've never had a job because I never felt the need for me to say yes and listen to somebody else telling me what to do, how to run my life. Right? I wanted to be on my own volition. I wanted to be I want to do this, so I'm going to give it a shot, whether it's right or wrong. Whether I fail, succeed, doesn't matter. I want the whole experience, right? I don't want to be, I'm not a machine that can be run by someone else. That was my primary motivation of being a creator. And by creator, not in the content creator way of seeing things. Sure, that's one way of seeing things, but from an entrepreneur, from building things, right? Creating whatever, creating products, businesses, teams, now even content. It's always been about freedom. People think creator economy is about money. It's not. Sure, money might be one important factor in the entire thing, but I was speaking to Tanmay Bhatt about this, I think a week or two ago. And we were talking about live cohort-based courses, right? And I was saying, dude, I did a live cohort-based course, but I might not ever do it again, me personally, primarily because I have to spend X amount of time a week being there, being answerable to somebody else and putting my time. I'm renting my time essentially.
Right.
Tanmay was in agreement. He's like, it's something that does not appeal to him either, because as a creator, you want your freedom. You're doing this for freedom. Right. And I think there's something innately human about the need for us to be free. And at the same time, that freedom translating into exploration. The reason humans go to Mars or the moon or whatever is exploration, right? And exploration comes from I'm free, I can do what I want. I'm not driven by someone else.
Yeah, my time isn't rented out by someone else. So I wonder, if you use your free time of your own volition to run your company, what do you do for leisure then?
That's the thing. No, there's not. Um, this might not seem apparent to
Hmm.
someone who doesn't know me well, right? I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about generally public audience. My Me running a company is not me working. I don't work. I don't work for a living.
Right.
It's me playing, right? So, for example, we just raised the money now. We're incredibly well capitalized, right? But the motivation to capitalize doesn't come from, oh, I need to have money. The motivation to capitalize comes from, I will not lose. I don't want to lose. And I need whatever fuel is necessary to win. It comes from a purely competitive state of mind.
Hmm.
I want to fucking win, right? And that is very different from, shit, I need to earn whatever X amount per month and feed my kids and blah, 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 right? Or pay my rent and blah, blah, blah. It's a very different drive. This is my real life Dota.
Hmm.
Building a business is real life Dota.
Let's talk about drive for a second. So have you always had this intensity and drive, and maybe are there examples from, say, your childhood or your school life where you exhibited some of these and you realized, without tooting your own horn, that clearly there is something that you're meant to do, and now this moment is the culmination of that? But there instances in the past, in your childhood, when this was first exhibited?
I was actually very underconfident when I was young.
Really?
Very young. I remember in my school, in eighth or ninth standard, I don't remember when, very old, decades ago. My PT teacher asked me to draw, like, using chalk powder,
Hmm.
the boundaries of the volleyball court,
Right.
and I did it wrong. Right, I did it somewhere else. Like, I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking, but I didn't do it in the right way, and I got laughed at by the PT teacher and like 50 other students there. Right, and I remember this so clearly because I always remember being underconfident. Like, someone said something about me, I'd always be like, "Oh shit, I've done something wrong." Blah, blah, blah. I was always very, very underconfident. I think over time that changed. Right, I don't know. Like, I haven't sat down and thought about where the switch happened, how it happened,
Hmm.
what were the triggers. But I changed over time. I started becoming more self-sure. Um, Even though in the beginning it was more, I would say, out of arrogance when I hit puberty and beyond, rather than any concrete evidence that I should be self-sure now. Um, and I guess that changed me fundamentally, right? Like, the minute you start becoming confident about yourself, you're just like, shit, now I don't need to run on anybody else's clock.
Right. It's a paradigm shifting moment. It's
Yeah.
like when you take psychedelics for the first time, you realize everything's different.
And and
Um,
and, and now I don't relate to my much younger self. Like, I will not
hmm.
relate to the 10, 12-year-old
And you
or
have no
15-year-old
empathy
Varun.
for this kid, like no like sense of even like a poetic nostalgia for whoever this kid was trying to figure it out.
No, bro, the kid was not trying to figure it out. No. I
No.
know what the kid was trying to. I'll tell you what the kid was trying to do. That I understand very well, right? The kid was a people pleaser.
Hmm.
And the kid was like, shit, what will other people think of me? So I understand the drive. The drive was, I want the respect of these people. I want these people to, whatever, appreciate me, etc., etc. I don't care anymore. Right? Like, if somebody throws a stone at me or somebody says good things about me, it does not affect me that much.
Right. Hmm.
I don't do it
Fascinating, man.
for their appreciation.
Varun, yaar, ek baat batao. Like, I grew up in a city that's right next to New Delhi, Faridabad. It's an industrial city. It's the biggest industrial city in Haryana.
Mhm.
Um, we all lived close to each other. There wasn't a lot of culture as to Mumbai is the city of Bollywood, Bangalore is the city of technology, that sort of thing. The vicinity to Delhi didn't really offer some kind of like a stone to put in the middle of a garden and say कि हम इस चीज के आसपास खड़े होते हैं, right? But my upbringing was like that. I cannot imagine possibly what it must be like to be born in Bangalore and then grow up there, and then eventually do exactly what the city offers to even a tourist reading Wikipedia about Bangalore, right? So for me, that's very interesting. कि अच्छा Bangalore में पैदा होके you did exactly what this is, advertised as in the world. What is like? What are some ways or like some things that are idiosyncratic to your upbringing or like just being in Bangalore, um, that might have led to this?
South Indians, no? And it's
Mm,
not the same. I'm a South Indian. So
mm,
this is just my personal observation. I think South Indians are very insecure in general, right? So they're, at least when they are, in those times, at least in India, it was a hard time, right? At least for my parents and stuff, right? Because you didn't know whether you would have a job the next week. You don't know if you'd be out on the streets.
mm.
Whereas, in
You're a first generation entrepreneur.
yeah, I'm a first generation.
Okay.
Whereas in northern India, and this is just my observation, right?
Sure.
Not trying to make blanket claims, but in northern India, people are more self-sure of themselves, even with less data, right? Then it's just like, I
For
know,
sure.
mujhe aata hai.
There's more conviction than substance, and it seems to carry itself out many times. I agree.
Yeah. South Indians are the opposite, right? The substance is there, but conviction is low, right? So that's what my parents were. My mom was very anxious, right? Very, very, very anxious. Just as an individual, right? Like, especially about finances. And then growing up, she transferred some of that anxiety to me, right? And eventually I found out that the only way to quench that anxiety, both about finance, like, having some money in the bank, and also generally about life and all its unpredictabilities, right, will come from knowledge. Like, if you work hard, if you really understand the basis of something, you will get it. And this is, by the way, I'm talking about me in my early 20s, right?
Right.
I was like, if I study technology, the chance of me making money is slightly higher. It seems to be stable. And that much I could tell, right? Because the writing was on the wall even that time. Most people didn't agree. For me, the writing was on the wall. So I studied technology. I was also a gamer, right? I was a gamer much before I decided to take this up as a career. For me, taking it up as a career was obvious.
Were you a gamer among a minority of gamers in your school, or were there lots of gamers?
That time, India barely had internet. Only if you had a desktop PC, you could game, right? And I had a desktop PC. A desktop PC, the same one that I was using for many years, but I still had one.
Right.
But dude, and that's why I learned tech. That's why I learned that, as long as you're working for somebody else, there's no stability.
Sure.
Whatever. Sure, entrepreneurship is obviously much less stable, but there are things you can, at least it's in your control, right? So basically, started out with me trying to be a control freak and trying to control my destiny in a sense, right? And I found that technology is probably one of the best ways to control your destiny without you having to hire 50 people who are all, who in turn end up controlling you, right? In a sense, because you're now responsible for them. I did that anyway. I still hired 50 people. But that was my thinking or my thought process at that point. And dude, that was me in my early 20s, right? Now me in my late 20s, I know that you can't control anything, right? Knowledge, there's a graph, no? You think after you learned a lot, you can control everything, then you're like, fuck, the world is infinite. What you know is a drop in an ocean, right? So the graph starts sliding downwards. Today, it's more this intersection of, sure, I know, but it's also this thing of, it's a gamble. Everything I'm doing is a gamble. Calculated guesses, calculated risk layer, but it's still a gamble. And I know that whether it works out or it doesn't work out, I will still, like, its influence on how it affects my mental health is now decoupled. Essentially, I know what I'm doing, right? When I'm an entrepreneur, I'm taking a shot. Shot might not work. I will learn something from the shot, but whether the shot goes in or it hits the rim and goes out, I will still, it'll still not affect me. Sure, it might affect me in the moment, but long term, it's not going to affect me.
Right. It doesn't change your happiness. I still sort of want to get back to growing up in Bangalore a bit, because I'm sure there are factors that I cannot see. Maybe there are buildings or centers where, or maybe big billboards that said, these are the icons of our city. You can be like them. Maybe there was a culture where people met
Yeah,
in
none of that
cafes.
happened.
No,
None of that happened.
it was
Yeah.
just a guy in a room with a computer. That's it.
Yep. In fact, I would say I was more influenced by, at that time we didn't have Facebooks and whatnot, right? We had more these old school message boards. We had things
Right.
like forums, right? And we had MSN Messenger. So I would say those were my influences. I probably learned more about entrepreneurship from Paul Graham and his essays than anyone in my vicinity. Because do think about it. My mom's she worked in the bank, right? My
Right.
dad was a doctor. My uncle, again, studied really hard, did some, I think worked in pharma. No entrepreneurs nearby. Even my dad, he has a few brothers. He has actually 5 brothers. Right? Comes from a very poor town called Bantwal near Bangalore. They, even though my dad did okay for himself, nothing fancy. Even his brothers, none of them were entrepreneurs, right? So, and definitely no guys in tech. There's not a single soul in my immediate or extended family that said, learn how to use a computer. Right? Not a single person. My initial attraction to computers, what attracted me to a computer was gaming, bro. That's where it started. And I assume that's where it'll also end. I have this theory that eventually people in life do what they did between the ages of 8 to 12, 15.
100%. I read a tweet about that. It's like, but it said it had it like way earlier. It was like, you basically end up, your 20s are basically shamelessly doing the things you loved at 13. That's what I read.
Not 20s, I would say 50s or 60s.
Why is that?
I don't know. I've seen it a lot of times. Like one thing now, because obviously I spent some time with venture capital firms, people who are quite senior in the ecosystem. They're all reasonably old, and they're all, I would say, I'm talking with them more personally now rather than professionally. They're all personally, they're reliving their childhood now,
Gardening,
without
bikes, whatever,
Yeah, whatever they did when they were young, whatever they were interested in whenever they were young. It's a vicious cycle or a virtuous cycle, depends on how you see it.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know how to code, but I keep my eyes peeled for what is news, and I've been seeing that all across India, coders are popping up wherever I see, and I never paid attention to the quick basic, visual basic classes in computer classes in school. They were pretty bad, and now I see people coding, and there's stuff like no code. I have no idea how to even figure and wrap my head around it. It's just not a skill set I'm familiar with, but I do understand that when I eventually want to hire coders or even understand the world that I'm living in, that there is a possibility that I might have to learn about this. A video of yours popped up on my feed. I didn't open it, but the title said why you should learn coding. And I'm wondering if you can just talk about that straight up.
Yeah. I think no. Sometimes India reminds me of me when I was very young, right? I told you I was very insecure.
What do you mean by that? Like the entire country is an extrapolation of your psyche? Is that what you're saying?
No, in the sense it reminds me. When I was very young, I was very insecure. Right? In general, I was just very insecure. Right? I grew up in a South Indian, very insecure family. And I don't blame my family, obviously, for this. It's just a reflection of the times, right?
Right.
And reflection of Bangalore in that period. Yeah, one of the things I used to do, whenever somebody was doing well or doing something that I didn't know how to do,
Right.
I'd just shit on it. I'd just shit on it. And this is a classic hallmark symbol of insecurity, right? Like somebody would be really good at sports, and I wasn't very
Yeah.
good at sports, right? When I was very young, even though I was sports captain, I wasn't very good at sports. I was only good at badminton. Um, and when people just play sports or like be really good at running and all, I'll be like, yeah, yeah. I just make fun of them.
Right.
I'll be
Right.
like, it's not useful for life and stuff like that. And I see the same thing happening with code now in India, right? Like a majority of the population can't code. So they'll say, yeah, why are you forcing children to code? Some shit I've seen like, and there's probably a little bit of their anger obviously has to be directed towards White Hat Junior, but the concept behind White Hat Junior is fine.
Hmm.
The way they did their advertising obviously was predatory, right?
Sure.
So people can't differentiate the two. People's heads, if one thing is the villain, everything associated with is also a villain.
Correct.
If one thing is good, everything associated with that thing is good.
Hmm.
It's a very strange black or white way of seeing things. Dude, code is a really powerful tool to communicate with machines, right? We use the English language. You and I use the English. How we communicate? You understand, right? I'm sending images to your brain whenever I
Right.
speak.
I'm
Whenever I
decomplicated
say,
understanding. Yeah.
yeah, whenever I say, dude, there was a child with chalk powder trying to draw a volleyball code, you're getting something feeding images into your brain, right?
Right.
Similarly, code is the way to feed information to a computer in a form that
Sure.
it can understand. That's all it is. That's all it is, right? Even when you're very young and first standard, they now have coding, simple programming classes in first standard, right? Where you
Hmm.
have you have this turtle called a logo turtle, and you move it around with simple instructions,
How you should
right?
do that in school as well.
Yeah. So all the way from there to like proper advanced coding games and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Essentially, what are you doing? You're just feeding the computer instructions in a language it can understand. That's all it is. And people overcomplicate the shit out of it. If you can program human beings, and by program I mean talk to human beings, send them images, you can get a lot done, right?
Sure.
You want a cookie, you go to your mom and you say, Mom, can I have a cookie? Transmits an image into her brain. If you're on good terms with her, she pulls out a cookie, gives it to you. Right? Similarly, if you say, hey, Varun, can you jump on a podcast? You're transmitting an image into my brain, and I will either say yes or no.
Right.
Right? Essentially, you are moving or bending human reality. Right? And with code, you are now bending the reality of inanimate objects that can understand instructions. Right? Essentially, silicon-based crude life forms. You're telling them what to do. And unlike human beings, it's a lot easier to get silicon-based life forms to do what you want them to do. Right? The only thing is you need to know the magic language. You need to know
Right.
the wizard tongue.
Right.
Right?
It's like being the Pied Piper, the one who can drive away the rats.
Yeah. In a simpler way, it's like that you've seen in Harry Potter, no? They have
He
that
can speak to
language,
the
the snake
snake.
language. Yeah.
Right.
Parcel tongue,
Yeah.
if I
He who
remember
speaks
correctly.
in magic tongues. There's also an Egyptian god who does that. I forget his name. Um, okay, but what if people say stuff like, but I'm an artist, or better yet, I'm an actor. Why do I need to learn how to code?
It doesn't matter what you are, no? Coding has nothing to do with any of those things. You can use it to manipulate those things or help you with your acting world or your whatever art world. But code essentially is something else. It's you talking to inanimate objects. It's you saying, hey, here's a robot. I can now program the robot to clean my floor. It's
Hmm.
making your life easier, convenient, blah, blah, blah. And today it's simple, right? Today it's simple. Today you can get like a simple robot, you can program it to clean your floor, right?
Right.
You can program a simple app to make you some money, right? And wouldn't that give you more time to do your art,
That's true.
right? Wouldn't that give you more time to be an actor or,
Hmm.
get your distribution? I mean, today, whether you recognize somebody as an actor or not purely depends on are you exposed to those people. And with
Correct.
code, you can actually get exposure for yourself, right? So it can be used in n number of ways.
But what about like someone like me who's 24 right now and decides this is a valuable skill, but I'm already leveraging these other activities that give me money and like that are my vocation, etc., etc. Um, and at that point, wouldn't it be too late to learn the ropes of what you so naturally know, or like what how do I say, first mover coders know? Like how long does this skill take to get to a level where you can basically, I don't know, program the way your Spotify works?
Hmm. So look, bro, today you essentially can program a simple robot to clean your house, right? You agree
Yes.
with that, right? And you might say, well, dude, I can just hire a maid or I can do it myself, right?
Hmm.
I'm talking about you or whoever else who's not native to code. But that's where machines are today, right? 10 years down the line, these machines are going to be equivalent to gods. It's literally going to be like a, if you go put your hands together and pray to Shiva or whatever god you pray to, and just say, hey, I want a new car or I wanted this or I wanted that, right? God is not going to respond. But here, with where the machines are going to end up, they are going to be gods. Maybe they'll not give you a car, but there'll be a hell of a lot of things they're going to give you, or you can just ask them for that they can produce for you. Isn't it worth taking the effort to learn how to communicate with a future god? That's how I see it, right? And you might think, oh, this is a long time in the future, like 20 years in the future, 30 years. It's not, because the rate of evolution of technology doesn't look like this. It's not a linear graph. It's
Right.
exponential. It goes like this. And it's like I saw this unemployment graph right after COVID, right? It went something like this in the US. It's like this, it's slightly increasing, and then wham, this goes all the way up. And every invention in the tech world improves the past inventions and also provide the base layer for new inventions. So today, when you
Right.
write code, you don't write it in assembly language, right? You write it in some language which is actually an abstraction of assembly language. In fact, you write in a language probably 2 or 3 layers deep. So you're not telling the computer which transistor to use, right? You're saying int x equal to 5. You're storing a variable name. And you have 2 languages below telling the computer where to store this variable, which block of memory to store it in, how to clean it up, how to do garbage collection, shit like that. So in 10 years, the level of abstraction will probably be at a point where it will be very close to human language, right? It'll be close, but it will still have some formal intonation to it, right? And the day that comes about, and this is what coders also realize once they start getting good at it, right? Like once it's been like 2 or 3 years, syntax is very easy to learn, right? The hard part is actually figuring out logic. Now, how to tell a computer something without the computer misinterpreting it? I'll give you a simple example of this.
You have to put a box around it.
No, I'll give you an example of this, right? You tell the computer, take a bottle of water, or I'm just telling you, right? Take a bottle of water and put some chocolate powder in it, okay? And then swirl it. You understand what I mean, right? Now, when I go to a computer, if I just speak and say water, chocolate, sugar mix, I haven't specifically told the computer the order of doing it, right? So the computer is just as likely to first mix the chocolate and the sugar and then put it into water, which you and I won't do.
Right.
First, obviously, we'll take the water, right? We know that comes first. It's implicit in our head. Keep boss, water comes first, or like milk comes first. Then you put the other ingredients. You don't mix hot chocolate and sugar into each other, or coffee and sugar first, make a coffee sugar powder and then put it in the milk, right? We know that, but a computer doesn't. And more often than not, a computer will first mix those two things, right? So that's the thing about code, about logic. It'll be very clear, very, very, very clear. And that is what code is, right? It's a formal version of language where you're very clear. Your instructions are not ambiguous. Your instructions are not going to be interpreted ambiguously. And that's why all coding languages come with something called an interpreter. They interpret what you're meaning to say, right? And almost all of them read sentences from left to right, just like we
Hmm.
do, right? Which is why a language like Arabic would be a really big problem for most coding languages because it comes from right to left,
Right.
right? I'm just giving examples. So essentially, what I'm trying to tell you is that you don't necessarily have, like, people keep saying this, and I think people have over complexified this, right? Yeah, it'll take you 5 years to learn to code or 10 years. I mean, I've taught a bunch of students, right, some time
Hmm.
ago how to code. They've gotten to a pretty decent level, I would say. And that's also because they're used to using computers, right?
Right.
They know how to use a computer. And so do you, I guess. You can do it in a few months, man.
Hmm.
You're going to like 4 or 5 months. Sure, you will not know all the in-depth stuff, right? But you don't need to know the in-depth stuff. That's what I'm getting at.
Right. Right.
It's getting easier and easier and easier to code now because new frameworks are coming in that are hiding pieces away that old frameworks made you do. For example, in C++, I don't know if you remember this, maybe you've not done this. You
I've not
used to
done
have
this.
these, yeah, used to have headers, right? Include, you used to write a word called include and used to say which libraries you want.
Hmm.
Today, in almost most languages, libraries selection is automatic. It's automatic. Like you don't even have to mention those lines. You used to
Correct.
have like long lines in Java. Now you don't, especially in
Hmm.
languages like in frameworks like Ruby on Rails, you don't have these long lines of unnecessary declarations. You're just going straight. You're like, bro, I'm creating a model called pizza. Pizza has olives and pizza has tomatoes and pizza has garlic. And you get into that. You just get into defining stuff. And I feel like over time it's going to get even simpler. Over time it's going to be like you talking to Alexa. Like it's as simple as this, right? Watch this.
Right.
This is essentially code in action. Okay, I'm essentially going to code right now. Watch me. My hands are here. Okay. Okay, Google, light bulb red. Okay, Google, light bulb white.
Right. That's
Essentially,
literally what the syntax of a programming language looks like. Yeah.
yeah. I'll give you an example of this. Okay. Watch this. Okay, Google, light bulb off. Okay, Google,
For all
light
the
bulb on.
listeners, Varun Maya is having a stroke party.
Okay, watch this now. Okay, Google, light bulb, remove filament. You see that?
Right.
It couldn't understand it. It couldn't interpret what I was trying to say. Right. So essentially, you have to be clear and concise, just enough so that the computer can understand you. And that study of formal logic is essentially the study of code. People complexify it and say it's about Java or C++. Fucking rubbish.
Right. So if you understand basic philosophy and arguing rationally, because there are classes in logic and philosophy, courses, you can sort of have a framework, a parallel framework to what coding looks like. Um, I'm still pressed to ask you this. Earlier, you said something along the lines of, in the future, machines will be gods. I had your friend, rather our mutual friend Abhinav Chikara on my other podcast, which I do in Hindi, which we ended up talking in English because it's Abhinav. And I suggested something along the lines of, one way to introduce mythology back into the Indian psyche, if I speak in general brushstrokes, which has been sort of disenfranchised, and mythology has been scattered all over the place. So, like how video game universes and even like the Greek people of Greece have gods as characters that they can embody, archetypes they could use. We sort of don't have that. Our gods are very devotional. Our gods are um, mediated via a mediator, and even then, whatever their myths or stories uh, are always trapped in books that we cannot understand. That are the books that are inaccessible in a way. So I was thinking, if there's a way to make gods as playable characters and introduce them via games, with specific gods having, like, someone has extreme blowing power, right? But has very little defenses. And maybe that could be a very interesting way to bring, I guess whatever we have in our culture along with technology.
Vinamra,
Hmm,
सीधा जेल जाएगा.
I know that. But has it never been attempted? I'm impressed to ask.
It has. There was a US game that did this called Smite, right? I think they brought in Kali or something,
Hmm.
and they got absolutely shredded, bro. They got wrecked by
Really?
like some 5 parties or something in India. Dude, India is a very India, no, everyone makes their identity like at least there'll be like 10 people with an identity directly associated and attached and self-confidence directly associated and attached to some god in India,
Hmm.
right? So good luck. I mean, you'll have to be anonymous to do it essentially,
For sure.
and it's hard for you to do large. You can do small projects anonymously, right? You can be an
Hmm.
artist or something. If you want to make a full game, it's very difficult to do it anonymously today. Very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I only said that because you talked about machines being gods. For me, again, not native to extreme coding and entrepreneurship, but for me, that is reminiscent of what is that episode? What is that movie in Terminator where is it Terminator 3 Skyrim, where machines take over the world? And I know how trite and how um, common this sounds, but because I do not know about machines to the same extent that you do, that's naturally where my mind goes.
Bro, machines are exactly like human beings. Right? They're exactly, I'll give you an example. Okay. I'll tell you what I really meant by a machine can be a god.
Hmm.
And this is going to be a little like sci-fi dystopic. So bear with me. Okay. Essentially, one day you will merge with a machine. You
Sure.
already have to a certain extent. Like
Mm-hmm.
my neurotransmission is very dependent on this machine, believe it or
Right.
not. And so is yours, right? No matter what you say, what you think. Eventually this will become smaller and smaller and smaller. It's like it has, like a computer is big. This is a small version of a computer. Eventually this will just be like a small chip in my brain,
Right.
right? Or it might not even be a chip. It'll just be like some device, and then it'll connect to Wi-Fi to some actual box outside, right? Um, and essentially, once I connect, and the two parts to connecting, right? One is reading, one is writing. Reading, I think we're already there with Neuralink.
Hmm.
You can go to. Did you see the monkey video?
I've just heard that that happened today.
Yeah, there's a Neuralink monkey video where this monkey is controlling like a game with just its mind, right? Through the Neuralink infrastructure. You should check it out. It's mind blowing.
Wait, so
That's
how is it
reading.
doing that exactly? Has it got a chip inside its brain and it's just hmm.
It's got a chip inside its brain, and they're using ML to take out the signals from that chip. And basically, that chip is getting all the signals from the monkey's brain.
What is
And
ML
this
exactly?
machine learning.
Machine
So
learning.
essentially, you're pulling out the signals and then you're interpreting those signals. What is the monkey trying to do? And the way
Hmm.
you do it is in a very strange way, right? Like I'll give you an example. Say you're putting on a headband that can read your electrical signals from your brain. And on the screen, I give you a blue dot. Okay, it's in the middle of the screen. Now, whenever you think of, say, eggs, okay, or yeah, whenever you think of a chicken, suppose,
Sure.
okay, the blue dot becomes bigger. And whenever you think of a tiger, the blue dot becomes smaller. Now, both you and I know a chicken has nothing to do with a big dot. A tiger has nothing to do with a small dot. We both know that. These two things are not related at all. But because this is happening and this is being stored somewhere, assume you store this data somewhere, machine learning allows you to create those correlations.
Right.
Machine learning will allow you to create a correlation saying small dot is tiger, big dot is chicken, right? So now, without the blue dot on the screen, with just that device, whenever you think of tiger on this through that data, I can have a blue dot on the screen and make it small, right? And vice versa. Like if I think of chicken, it becomes a big blue dot without you even having a screen in front of you for visual guidance. And that's essentially what Neuralink does. So there's the read version of that, which is I'm able to take data from the brain. And then eventually, and that's going to take some time, is the write version, like writing to the brain, right? So
Right.
I can take data from outside and put it inside the brain. So now, instead of, I can take a small blue dot and send that to the brain. And because of that, the brain will now think of a chicken.
That's
tiger,
crazy.
right? So essentially what you're doing is you're doing the inverse, right? Which is you're taking now visual clues, throwing it into the brain. And this already happens to a certain extent, right? Like if I tell you about, say, a spider, there's a good chance you will think of something like a black thing with
A
8
typical
legs.
tarantula is what most people
Yeah.
would think, right?
And you will also feel like a little fear, right?
Sure.
Mixed with disgust and a little bit of curiosity also will kick in.
Hmm.
So essentially, I'm getting a neurochemical response out of you by just saying a word, right? With Neuralink, when it starts to be able to write to the brain, it doesn't. You need not just be able to, you know, put out vague emotions. You can actually put out very clear emotions and very clear thoughts into the brain, right? So you should think of the read version of Neuralink to be like your fingers, right? When we use a mobile phone, we use our fingers to send data to the mobile phone,
Right.
right? So it'll probably be used like, for example, when people lose their arms, they still can feel their arms, right? Or at least they know the brain signals required to like make their arms do this. And you can try this whenever you sleep on your arm or whatever, and you can't feel it anymore. You can try moving your arms, right? Or you can still do it, but your arm
Right.
will not respond.
You won't have any
Essentially,
feeling. Hmm.
yeah, the arm will not move, but you're trying to make it move. So essentially, you're still sending the brain signals to make the arm move. And what ends up happening is when you put a prosthetic, because now you lost the arm, if I put a prosthetic and make that work with the electrical signals, when I'm reading from your brain, I know you're trying to move your lost right arm, where there's now a prosthetic, and the prosthetic will move
That's
because it'll
crazy.
start interpreting the messages, right?
Hmm.
But the right version is different. The right version is basically, and obviously this read version will help us, it will help us communicate better with machines, it will help us move lost arms, etc., etc.
Hmm.
But the right version of the machine is going to be essentially a dream machine. If you can write data to the brain, you can make it think anything. You can put it into a dreamlike state. When you're dreaming, what's happening, right? You're probably in a party doing something, but you know your body's actually not moving. It's just your brain thinking your body's moving,
Hmm.
right? You're actually living out your dream. So I could give you very, very, very vivid dreams, which are very similar to what the real life feels like. And that's what I meant by will allow us to communicate with a God. Because this God can now grant you anything. If not in the real world, then in your dream world, God can give you a Lamborghini. God can give you the perfect partner, whatever the hell you want, right? And it can
Sure.
also give you a lot of things in the real, right? Because as long as you have the physical resources for it. So if you give the God, say, I'll give you the example of 3D printing, right? If you have a model of whatever you want to create, God can actually give you a physical thing, right? Tomorrow, if you know essentially the right instructions to create pizza in a 3D printing machine, or a 3D pizza machine, it'll come out for you in
Right.
exactly the way you want it. Otherwise, if you give it the wrong instructions, it'll mix water and salt and chocolate instead of water and sugar and chocolate.
Have you seen Teen Titans?
Yeah.
Do you remember that cyborg character?
Mm-hmm.
I've always wondered, since these cartoons, there are many cyborg characters, by the way, that have existed throughout history and gaming universes and comic book universes and basically transmedia.
Bro, but I don't think an actual cyborg will be like that. And I'm talking about when technology gets really good.
No, but like a human and a cyborg, right? I've always wondered how they are able to move their limbs and do all of these things, because like you just said that the example you gave with the prosthetic arm, that requires transmitting thoughts from the brain to your body and saying, let's do this, right? I mean, move my arm. I don't know if they ever explained that. Was that intuitive? I'm just trying to figure out like possible conspiracy theories or origins of how cyborgs could move.
The theory is correct. You could probably I think in like 5 years, you'll be able to have a cyborg. Like 5 years. And in fact, you will be able to just cut off your hand. At some point, I'm pretty sure some idiot will do this, right? And if it gets good enough, then maybe even I might.
Really?
Part of your
You
arm.
will actually cut off a limb to be a cyborg, if at
It
all the
depends
possible.
on depends on how good the tech is. No? If the tech is
Right.
really good and can perfectly read what I'm trying to tell it,
Hmm.
then essentially it's not just a normal arm. I can attach more things to the arm, right? I can say, well, here's a GPS machine, and just with thought, I can make the GPS machine show up. Uh, Here is a jetpack, attached to my back, where just with thought I can fly.
Yeah.
And that's what the ultimate uh, communication with machine happens, right? And what is very important at that point is to have logic. Because if I tell my jetpack, bro, go to the left, but instead of giving it a left instruction, I give it the right instruction, I'll go crash into a tree.
Right.
That's why the ability to code is essentially a very crude way of interacting with inanimate things, which which are not smart enough to know exactly what you mean to say.
Hmm. Yeah, I wonder if the first cyborgs will be treated like mutants by other humans who refuse to do that.
No, actually, I'll tell you what will happen. Everyone will become a cyborg.
Really? You think
Yeah,
people will transition from their natural bodies? Um,
100%.
People already have a hard time doing stem cell regeneration therapy and all that jazz.
It's
And
different.
that's
It's
hmm.
different. I'll tell you why. Uh, why do we all use phones?
That's a very loaded question. I have no idea. I think it's become a part of modern life. It makes our life easier. Those are the dumb things I can think of straight on spot.
Okay, you take a random person from a village without a phone, and you take
Hmm.
another person with a phone. Who do you think is smarter?
The one with the phone because he has more access to data, easier.
Okay, who do
Sure,
you think
but it's
makes
also
more money?
counterintuitive at the same time.
Who do you think makes more money?
I mean, again,
The one with the phone.
city, right? Of course.
Who do you think has more opportunities?
No, I understand what you're saying, but like,
Yeah, so that's the thing, right? One of the main drivers for people to get phones, whether you believe it or not, was actually the fact that they're being left behind. People are like, first it started with entertainment for some people, and now it's become about I don't want to be left behind. If I don't have a good fast phone, somebody else is going to beat me. Economic opportunity is going to like leave me. So to run behind it, I will adapt. That's the thing, right? A rhinoceros can't live in the tundra. Humans
right,
can. Humans can live in the tundra because we are adaptable as fuck. And us adapting to phones was just, it's in our DNA. And the minute you see these cyborgs with jetpacks attached to their back who fucking flying, you'll be like, mujhe bhi karna hai. Because when you can fly, things become easier for you,
right,
right? When you can move really fast, things become easier for you. When you're attached in your brain to the entire internet and you seem to know the answer to any question ever asked to you, everyone else feels dumb next to you. So like, I also want to become smart. The need to upgrade is in the human DNA. The only thing, and this is more a youngster thing, because I'm pretty sure your audience and my audience also fairly young. That's why it seems a little key to them. Yeah, I have such a good hand, I have such a good back, I have such a good leg. Why would I let go of it? As you get older, you kind of let go of that as well. Because
right.
what people don't understand is you're attached to your human body, and that is not a very smart or good thing, right? It's just it comes out of attachment and desire, right? And if you and the problem is there's only one of those, and the reason you're truly attached to your body is because you are programmed to reproduce, right? You're programmed to reproduce, and you understand that having one whole body will make you more attractive to the opposite sex, whether you like it, whether you admitted this or not. But once you cross that barrier, uh, you don't care,
Sure.
right? Then life
When
becomes about
when
different
sex
things.
and stability, all of those got out of the roof, you're like, I'm gonna let my body go. I know some people who still hang on to their bodies pretty tightly and do whatever they can to preserve it, but I also understand that your body is decaying from the day you're born. So there is that.
Hmm.
Okay. Wow. That was crazy, man. I never expected you to go there. I'm still wrapping my head around as to when you say this because it isn't particularly popular to even believe in this idea of sort of just being one with machines. Um, do you have naysayers people don't understand, or are you just waiting for future to prove them wrong?
I've been right about a lot of things.
Yeah. What were you right about? What was your previous last forecast that got right?
I was right about gaming. I was very right about gaming. I was right about VR. I
Hmm.
was right about coronavirus way before it got to be a problem.
What were your speculations around coronavirus that would right?
So when China happened, right, and we started seeing cases in Italy, I was still following the news in Italy
Right.
um, because of the COVID, right? Like because of coronavirus. Um, I saw a few early cases in the US as well, and I know people there, right?
Right.
So this one guy in Italy was just like, dude, this is getting crazy here, right? And he linked me to some actual, you know, some. They have a federation of doctors, and that federation doctor put out a podcast or something like that. And I watched that, and they were like, dude, this is not a normal virus. This is not the fucking flu, right? And Italy went into lockdown. They were burning bodies, and this is way before COVID even touched
Any of
India.
this happened. This is early March. I remember
Yeah,
asking
yeah.
people. Yeah.
So I put out a post on Instagram. Okay, and
Yeah.
look, I'm not some epidemiological expert, but I know
For
when a
sure.
country is getting shit on, right? And you have no vaccine for this. You have no cure for this. Essentially, every cure was hypothetical at that point.
Hmm.
And people like I remember people like, bro, heat will kill COVID, and they send me a
Vitamin D,
link.
plasma therapy, a bunch of other stuff. Yeah.
They send me a link. They're like, heat will kill COVID. Yeah, tu vitamin C le, you'll be fine.
Right.
Look where we are now. I'm telling you, I was literally arguing with these people, taking screenshots of that, putting it on my Instagram. That time was my Instagram period. Like now it's become my Twitter period, but that time was my Instagram period. And I was just
Right.
like, what the fuck is wrong with you guys? Right? Can't you see? And people were just like, you should see the confidence people have. They think they know everything. And I was so unsure, right? I was like, hey, I hope we find a treatment by then. But then we had estimates by then from like all the top guys about when vaccine will come out. How do we actually get rid of this virus? The hospital bed capacity in India. Everyone's like, almost every serious guy at some point was just like, dude, we at least have to be careful about this. And that's my pitch as well.
Right.
I wasn't like, oh, panic and just like, quit school and whatnot. I was like, be careful about this. And look what happened. Yeah.
What happened exactly? Are you saying that people blew it out of proportion, that it's not a threat, but it turned out to be a
No,
threat? I'm not sure. I'm sure. What is the exact nature of your speculation?
no, I said that it's going to be a threat.
Hmm.
I said that this is something we definitely have to look out for.
Hmm.
And nobody agreed with me. They're just like, either nahi hai, China mein.
Oh, right. That early phase, I remember that as well. I remember, in fact,
Very early phase.
there was this moment. I was in Mumbai at that time,
And there was
and
this, and I was like, and I saw this one post about, or rather, I was looking at this data about masking, and there was a study on masking at that point saying that, if you wear mask, transmission reduces. I
Hmm.
posted that study word to word, like just a screenshot of that study on my Instagram. And one goes like, masks have not been proven to be useful. And I argued with the girl. I was like, it's kind of obvious, right? Like the way transmission happens, mask is
Right.
going to be a barrier. Sure, it might not stop everything, but it will decrease the total amount of transmission happening, right? Person to person. I got shat on. I'm telling you. And now we know. We know. But now
Right.
nobody cares. Now nobody's giving a shit anymore. Like, who cares the deaths or whatever? Like, people have just lost their minds now. Boredom, never underestimate what boredom can do to people.
Yeah, no, it's
The
crazy.
hard part was not staying inside for 14 days when we did lockdown back then, first lockdown. The hard part is doing it for a year.
Right. Yeah, I was just complimenting whoever our ministers are in my state, because it seems to me it's a lot like Texas or Florida. Here, one of the ministers announced, we will not ask you to do a lockdown. It's weird, but like I think Indians don't have a concept of civil liberty as much as the Americans do, but it's certainly on their minds. And if you decide to close shit down right now, it's just going to be bad. I don't know,
So the
like
economy is going to it's going to tank. Uh,
even worse, you
and
think?
yeah, it can go bad. It can go get even worse. And the thing is, I think this is one of the most interesting things about all this, right? Stock markets were still at a high, and they're still at a high,
Hmm.
right?
Why's that?
Because it's decoupled, man. I'm a big believer the stock market is scam. Sure, there's some, again, it's not black or white, right? It's not like it's a complete scam. It's not like it's completely, bells and whistles free. But I think that speculation is what drives the stock market and all of the markets. We used to
Right.
think it was asset backed. Nobody gives a shit. It's all based on hype.
I feel. Well, Varun, it's been fantastic having you on this podcast. I just sound really stiff because I'm not wearing my retainers. Having said that, we covered a bunch of topics. And I was glad to know your gaming history and game design and your lessons around coding and your comments around machines as gods. I'll never forget that. That's great. Um, beyond that, man, I appreciate all that you're doing in the space, and I would love to be on Voices. That's it.
Hasn't somebody given you
Yeah, yeah,
access?
people have reached out. Yeah, but I really liked that platform when it first came out. I was very bullish about it. I sent an email, but I think it fell through the cracks, and then my email inbox got full. But I saw some of the conversations happening, and I would love to do something around writing, because I think there's a void for that on the app. But
Happy
yeah,
to
man.
have you on, man.
Yeah, good fucking stuff. I'm sure you hear it all the time. ठीक है, चलो, take care, have fun in Bangalore, make some content.
Bye, Vinamra.
Bye bye.
Good chat.